Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. And today we're going to continue our series of how to program from the ground up. Oh, yeah, I got an update. Tech support. They called me and they said they're coming out Tuesday. Come on, guys. We'll get that portal closed soon enough. We'll see, right? This is one thing after another with these portal people. All right. So we're going to finish up this little section here about communicating software designs visually with the third law of software design, which is, we'll get into it. Let's see what he has to say. Third law of software design. Go give Jonathan a like and subscribe. This stuff is quality information. And he's only got 418 subs. Yeah, he deserves more. Let's get into it.
My name is Jonathan, and welcome to Software Design from the Beginning. There are previous parts to this video, and there is a kind of sequential flow to it, so I highly recommend going back and watching them in order.
Oh, I'm sure you guys will.
Let's get started. This is where we ended off in the previous video. What we're going to do is look at the checklist. The first thing to identify in any design, really, is the core primary structure. By that, I mean, what is the central concept of it all? If I was doing a booking system for a camping site, what do you think that might be? If I was doing a logistics application and there's long-haul trucks delivering all kinds of goods across the country, what might it be? And so if you can understand the industry, understand the application, understand the core domain language for the core area, this is where you start. This is the place where it must all center on.
Exactly.
It sounds easy enough, but you'll be surprised.
Exactly. It sounds easy enough. Exactly. And this is where it all centers. It sounds easy enough. But man, there are a ton of details in every area of human activity. And then there's specific details of that area of activity for a business that actually provides the true value. And figuring out what that is, even if the people who are running the business that who you're working with at the domain don't fully understand, you have to. Because it'll be your fault if you screw it up. So you got to know what's important. And the big part of the work is trying to extract out things that are important. And maybe they don't even know. Maybe they don't want you to know. That's often a thing. It's like, okay, guy, I'm not trying to do your business, man. I'm trying to help you. It's like, they'll be like, this is a trade secret. So business people have all this other stuff going on, right? That they don't necessarily have internalized, right? They don't necessarily know themselves. So it's like, this is such a big part of the work. And extracting this takes skill and effort.
Surprised to hear, perhaps, how complicated some applications are, and how the core seems to be split into 2 or 3 parts or more. The core can be split because of our technical requirements or how we think about the domain. For example, we might have an API that's based on a very CRUD-like feel, and we might have a domain object called trucks, right, or transport, or deliveries, or something like that, and there's a whole list of these things, and the API, and we can call them, and the logic and the feel might be on this side of the fence, and we have to code and call the right thing in an order. Perhaps you're not surprised to hear that that is a very common thing, and in that way, we're taking the complexity away from ourselves, right, the encapsulation, and we're giving it to the customer, whoever's calling the API. But also what we're doing is confusing the core. Which API or which part of the API represents the core of the system? So it's very, very important. APIs who get this right tend to be very easy APIs when you understand that the core comes.
So API is application program interface. So when you're designing this for your application to talk to other services or have other people talk to you, how you set this up and the metaphors you use and the ideas and the domain language that's there, it has to be correct. It has to be right. And it's so easy to get it wrong.
The concept that you think should be the core, you go and have a look, and there it is the core. And that sort of understanding, that closeness that you have in terms of your mind thinking that something should exist, and then it does, that's a good feel for a design. When you look at a design and you see
the law of least unexpected. This is what and that whole thing. This is actually a skill and a talent. Honestly, it's both a skill and a talent to find out what is important and to eke that out and actually make that as a part of the application. It takes forever.
Nothing of the things that you were thinking. So you're looking at a bonsai farm and you understand, okay, there must be trees. And you have a look and you're looking through the API and you see stock, you see material, you see species, and you don't see the word tree. Well, okay, maybe it's not too hard. We can see species and material. Maybe material is species. Oh, there's a connection there. Maybe you'll forge ahead. But it's not as intuitive as seeing something called tree. Right? Because tree is obviously what bonsai is all about, and everything can stem off the tree.
So what he's referring to here is the common practice that has been up until, well, it's still pretty common, where they technicalize the domain and they have a special domain language for just the coders, which is different than the domain of the actual business. And they try and technicalize computer science people, like people that get into this stuff. They try and make it all technically stuff. So there's like a domain inside the language and then there's a domain outside language. And this has caused massive problems and companies to fail, spaceships to fall out of the sky, this kind of stuff. You have to have a common domain. It's super important. And I know it's like going on about this a bit, but this is the work.
So if you are generalizing and abstracting a design, you've got to be very careful not to abstract it away too far so that the core is obscured. In my opinion,
programmers love to do this. This is like one of the worst things I've seen programmers get into because they go, oh, they start to see the patterns and like, oh, let's just make those general now. It's like sometimes they should be kept separate. There's sometimes the ideas should be kept separate just because there's a common idea. Because what will happen is they'll glom together when they really shouldn't be glommed together, and then you go further down the projects like those things really need to be separated apart. Now you have to special case all this stuff. It's really important.
In systems where the core is so obscured, makes for very complicated systems.
So horrific. Basically, ends those kinds of issues will end projects. They will kill projects, or you'll be on a death march with it because you just can't come to the end of it. Because these kinds of ideas, these things are intractable. Once they're in there, they're embedded now. Very difficult to change with the previous styles of programming.
Let's have a look at what that could be. Let's pick the bonsai farm. And what I'm going to do is say that there is a tree. And the tree, let's get rid of all of this actually. Let's get rid of all of this. All of this. No complications here. Nothing in our way. So we're just going to draw something here and we're going to say that this is a tree. If I was thinking, so I'm going to put a header up here and just say that that's a bonsai farm. Okay, so if I was thinking of building an application for, let's duplicate this. If I was building an application for the kennel, right, the kennels, there you go, then what would be the central part of a kennel? Is it the animal? Is it the lodging? Do I think that it is the seats available, right, or the beds available? Right? So the kennel operates very much on beds, right, or enclosures, areas. So if the kennel has 10 beds, I can keep 10 animals. So one could say, well, that's the core, and the animal, right, sits inside of that bed, right? That's what we could say. On the other hand, we could say, well, no, that's a different way of thinking about it. What we do is we book the animal in, and the animal is assigned to a bed, right? How you choose the core, the primary structure, is everything.
Everything. These kind of decisions will wreck your application or make your business succeed, or have whoever you're working with success. This is the kind of stuff that will wreck your app.
Right. The choice that you make here and what kind of level of abstraction and generalization you place on that core could end up in entirely different systems. It's very important to get that core. Let's think of another one. We're going to book something on a camping holiday. So what is it? So let's call this a camping holiday application, and we need to do bookings. Is it bookings? Am I saying that? Am I leading you? Am I saying that bookings is the most important thing, and then campsites are the secondary thing? Which way around is it? Do we have campsites as the primary thing? And booking, right? We campsite, and then we do a booking for that campsite.
Right. These kinds of questions become super important. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you managing bookings? Are you managing campsites? Do you need to manage them both separately? Are there like subcontracts to do with? Are these? There's like so many things, right? This is where it starts to get gnarly. It's like, ooh, this is a little harder than I thought.
Right? Which way would you do that? Right? So I'm not going to give you any answer because, in fact, there probably isn't an answer.
Correct. Correct. There is no answer. Depends. What are you trying to do? Who are you working for? What are they trying to do? What problems are they having now? What problems can you circumvent after you understand the domain that they're working in? That's the kind of stuff.
But it is important. And it's so important for the rest of your design. As I throw things into the system, as I throw more and more things into the system, and I'm creating relationships between these other things, then...
And he doesn't mean bookings. He means like cancellations and, extra, some other service, and then all that stuff gets applied. And it's like,
it's going to matter more and more.
Special weekend deals, and, special handlings. Like, what happens if we have to do a concert? Do we switch all that stuff out? Do we have to, like, all that stuff?
In fact, if I have relationships between everything, and you're thinking from a technical standpoint, I would like to decouple, you might say, well, okay, booking, but actually there is a thing called days, and this thing is going to be related to a booking, but I'm going to decouple it because I've got this other concept called, let's think of something. We've got weeks, right? Days and weeks. There you go. And that's some kind of time frame. So in this case, I can slot in a day kind of booking or a week kind of booking, and I want this entirely decoupled. I don't want a line there. In other words, I would like something abstracted. So I can put something in here and say that there's some kind of duration type. Okay. And that duration type, well, here we are. We have a generalization of these two things, and I'm going to rely on that. And, I'm not going to discuss now whether it's an API interface or whatever that might be. Let's just say we've got something like this.
Okay, this is the conceptual level. How it's implemented is completely different. So we can talk about that afterwards. Let's get this right first, or at least try to do our best effort.
Is this the right way to do it? Is this the worst way to do it? Is this generalization wrong? Is it overkill? Should I just not have perhaps a label on here with what the duration actually is?
Right, and those are the kind of questions you have to ask when you're putting these things together. Those are the appropriate questions to ask when you're putting this stuff together for people. He's not particularly this thing. This is like a contrived example, but like when you're working through it, what is it? What is this stuff? Why can we get rid of this? Does this belong someplace else? Though it takes forever, but you have to do it because once it's in code, it takes even longer.
This form of design, the decisions that we make in terms of the core structure and the relationships that drive from that core structure, that makes an entirely different application. Let's do it. Let's create another application. Camping holiday, there it is. And we're going to say, well, what we're going to do is base everything on a booking. And the booking is for people, right? So we're going to you have a booking process. And the booking is for seats. And then we're going to say the site. And that's how we do it. Now the site, well, there's different types of sites. So we're going to abstract this away and say, okay, well, that is a site, camping site. There you go. And later on, we're going to embed something at this level here, which is derived from the abstraction over there. So in fact, site is the abstraction, actually. So the site is the abstraction, but there you go, camping. Let me do that again. We've got camping, which is the abstraction of a site. And then perhaps we have, I don't know this domain, to be honest. I don't do a lot of camping, so I'm struggling.
Well, why I have a joke for you. Why is sex swing camping so amazing? Because it's intense. Why doesn't he put tense here? It needs to be intense, guy.
For words, but there you go. Let's call this something else. We'll call this field or caravan kind of thing. So here we have a booking, and you book seats for a site, and then there's camping. Look
but when you do tense, okay, whatever. Let's skip it.
At how different this architecture or how different this design looks, and what kind of complications you might come into play in doing the system in these two different ways. Now, you could probably think of a third one. If I pressed you, you could probably think of a fourth one. You might be creating arbitrary differences and just doing it for the exercise. But you must remember that different people have different ways of thinking and reasoning about these things. And
yes. So we can't get upset when somebody else has a different idea of how to do something in a system. They may have a better idea. So shutting people down when they come up with an idea is really bad. Let them speak. Let them talk. Let them fully flesh it out. It'll become obvious whether it'll become as a good way of doing it or not, or it may not. And we have to work through it. Don't be a dick. Just because you see the way that works doesn't mean that's the only way. There may be something else you don't see. So many people I've had meetings and talking with, they take their idea, their implementation as the way to do it. Now, if it's the owner, he's paying the check. Yes, let's do it his way. But if it's just another person on the team, we have to have a way to discuss these things because we don't care who's right. It doesn't matter who's right. Nobody gives a shit who's right, except the customer, except the person paying for it or the person using it. They matter. Our opinion don't count. They don't care. They don't know Charlie implemented the red button on Tuesday. They don't give a crap. They just don't want to know when they press it, it's going to cancel the order. That's the important thing. And then we get paid and we get money. We go do whatever we want, right? That's the whole idea, right?
An environment where the domain expert, perhaps, or the owner of the business who wants the app, they're going to come at you from a certain angle. They're going to be saying, it's all about the bookings, it's all about the bookings. Their language will be bookings. Well, here's an Excel spreadsheet where I currently keep my bookings. My booking information is stored like this. And this could drive you down a line of creating bookings as the primary core structure. Is that correct for the longevity or the long-term additions or the kinds of things you're going to add to this?
For how you're going to modify it in the future. So you have to think about that. And that only comes from some experience or just being insightful. You can actually don't have to, you just have to be insightful. Or you could be part of this domain for a while and you're in the area of business and and you have an alternative way of thinking about it where you can cut out some efficiency somewhere. That's what we're doing. We're actually kicking people's jobs. We're taking people's jobs with this stuff. We're trying to do it more efficiently, getting them something else to do that's worth more than their time than what we're giving, the value we're bringing. That's what we're doing.
App in the future, maybe it is, maybe it's not. That is a decision that you have to be very, very careful with. So the core primary structure is incredibly important.
And sometimes it's just a gut feel. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. You have to undo it and go back. And that's the process. That's the knowledge process. We don't know ahead of time. I know this is computer people know everything. It's like, no. We can change everything. That we can do. We don't know everything. No, we don't know everything. Hardly. But we can change it, though. Let's change it. If it's wrong, let's change it. That's software, right? It's changeable.
Moving on to requirements. Now, we kind of alluded to this in a way. It kind of relates to the core structure in the sense that the requirements might force you down a certain way of thinking, like I've just mentioned. But requirements are also things like, can I export this data? Can I search for something? Can I double book? And so on. And the requirements are going to lead you to more and more rules, or I should say perhaps flow. So the seating, there might be flow. Let me draw it another way and say that there could be business rules, perhaps, attached between this relationship. And business rules really could exist at any point. And your requirements really boil down into this kind of language. The requirements are very, very important, but are they as important as designing the correct kind of model? I would argue it's not. I would say that the requirements is actually a stumbling block or misdirection. Often when people think about design in this current agile kind of methodology world, we're thinking, where's the requirements? Get the requirements, follow the requirements. The problem with this approach is you might...
That actually was the waterfall approach. And we do have to get some requirements up front, which is just talking to people about what they want to do and what's currently being done and how they're currently doing and how we can talk about doing it better. That's gathering requirements. And it just doesn't look like we get them all up front. We could try to get as much up front. We try and be as smart as possible in the reasonable amount of time that we have to work on whatever we're working on. Yeah, we're gonna try and find it, but we're gonna change it along the way. That is inevitable. There is no project that gets started without changing along the way in computer software. Unless you're doing a tutorial, but the minute you enter the tutorial, you're going off on your own thing. You're probably gonna rewire it up, or you're gonna abandon it, or do something else.
Not be building the correct model in the correct way for that current set of requirements. The requirements might be turned on its head come the following year. What you really have to think about is the domain. And there are types of design that focus on that, DDD, for example. And the domain is such an important part.
DDD is domain-driven development, which means that everything in the code, the words you use and everything in the code matches the whatever the shared documents are. The words that you use in the code is the same words that you use in the domain. And you have a shared domain between technical, non-technical people, business, non-business people. Everyone has the same words for the same things. Domain-driven development. You mean everybody calls everything the same thing so we don't get confused? Is that the idea? Wow, profound.
Part of it. We should not neglect its role in the requirements, or we should not let requirements supersede or influence the domain model that we should be designing. That does not mean that we design the entire domain model or design everything up front, but what it does mean is we design the correct primary core that even might go against requirements or feel that it goes against requirements because you're introducing a boundary or a concept or some cohesive object or some kind of relationship that is not within the requirements, but it is necessary for the model to be a long-term solution.
And that happens so much, and you do have that is a skill that you have to build up over time. And honestly, a lot of times happens when you're like, don't take your gut feel, and you say, okay, we'll just do it that way, and then all of a sudden 6 months down the road, it's like, we're stuck, we have to back up now. You're fired.
And this is a very important part of design, and I feel like it's a neglected part, one that leads to further complexities, refactorings, reworkings, and so on.
Well, refactors, reworkings are going to happen no matter what. But the big ones, like if we can make them small and we try and like understand the big core of the domain ahead of time, well, we're going to put ourselves ahead of time. Sometimes it's not possible. But if it is, let's try for it, because it'll save us time down the road, and we can maybe have a successful project, more successful project. So it's the getting started. We start coding now. No requirements. No, don't forget it. No requirements. Just gonna break things, move fast. Okay, those days. That's great for a zero interest environment. For when you have free money flowing around, you can just throw anybody at anything. Yeah, just go for it. Don't have to be careful at all because you don't care. Everything's cheap. Money's cheap. People are cheap. But now in this environment where it's going to be a little, that's not quite a thing anymore for a while at least. We're going to have to be a little more conservative with how we approach these things. And how about planning up front before we start coding a little bit? Not big design, not the big design, big everything waterfall. We're never going to change it. No, we get it to going kind of how we want, and then we'll change it along the way. Just think about things ahead of time a little bit instead of just jumping in. Start typing badly.
The next part is architecture. And really what we've got to consider there, we're going to do this very briefly. This is really another topic for a whole nother video. Just to briefly introduce it, the architecture of your design is important not just because of traditional things and thoughts, we need an API and an MVC and separate and decouple and those kind of things, but the architecture geared towards the business domain. So if we're going to be following some kind of booking system for this camping site, and the booking system is an internal proprietary locked-in system, or if it is a microservice, right? Are we providing services from a business capability standpoint, not a technical, but a business?
So he's just saying how we can structure this thing for delivery. If it's going to be serving, 10,000 customers, maybe we don't need to do microservices. Maybe we can just have a server, a couple of servers somewhere, and one in a backup. And we don't need the microservice. But what happens if we're doing 1 million people, or there's going to be 10 million people, and we know for sure we're going to be dealing with that way? Well, microservices, we're going to have to pay the piper on that one. We're going to have to go down that. We're going to have to go down that pipe because there's no other way we're going to be able to handle 10 million people at a time on 2 servers. Okay, so it just depends. But going for the maximum. One day we will have 10 million, so might as well build it. Well, how many do we have today, and how many are expected to have by the time this project's done? If it's going to be 11,000 people, probably do it one or two servers. It's probably going to be fine.
Standpoint, are we providing the search to other systems? Can people call the bookings from their website and call us and have their own UI? Those kind of requirements, that kind of architecture should be dictated and driven by business capability. It is not good enough for you to say microservices is the in thing. We must develop in microservices.
Yeah, don't do conference-driven development, which we'll be getting into in the next episodes. He's talking about taking these taking these packages you see at the conference. We're all pumped up. Yeah, the latest thing. Yeah, we're gonna win. And then they realize they got a vendor lock-in with Amazon, and you are getting paid $10,000 a month when your bill should be $500.
And when people say, you might hear a lot of this. You might say, don't do microservices. It's absolutely terrible. You might say, microservices is the answer for everything.
It just really depends. What are you trying to do? Who are you trying to do it for?
The truth is, it's the answer for many things, the things that matter to you, if they matter to you. That is, the crux of the matter. Do you require this architecture for this domain model? And how you build that system, how you build that core infrastructure, the core architecture, the core domain is it's the crux of all the design work that you're going to be doing. And it's really the bane of your problems if you get it wrong. In the next part, we'll be going through...
For sure. Go give him a like and subscribe. And we'll be getting into some of the stuff he just mentioned. Some thoughts on common software methodology. That's coming up next. Give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris. And you are learning how to program from the ground up.